Good evening, everybody. We're in the office, and of course, that means technical difficulties. Hello, everybody, and welcome to tonight's roadmap stream. I'm JD.
Hello, I'm Matt.
And we are in the office, which is lovely. It's really nice to have, again, the opportunity to come at you kind of from Dovetail HQ. We've been doing some bits and pieces in-house today, so I thought I'd pop along and join you for the roadmap tonight. Hello to everybody watching. Happy 4th of July to all of our American viewers. Hope you're enjoying it and having far too many barbecues and apple pies and all of those other things that taste absolutely delicious, but I'm sure will give you plenty of digestive problems tomorrow morning. Enjoy that mental picture as we go into this month's roadmap. So July roadmap, everybody. It seems like a little while since we've been on a roadmap live stream, but actually, obviously, we did sit down in June and we chatted about a few bits and pieces. But let's talk about what we've talked about. Let's talk about what we talked about today, Matt. Can you tell we've just rammed up some dinner down our throats and I was
utterly prepared.
Oh, we've got a script and everything. Don't worry, we have got a script. We obviously released the roadmap today. We've also released a patch today, so it's been a busy one. We'll talk a little bit about those as we go through the live stream. But the key headlines really this time round, we've launched a patch today which releases the HST livery designer functionality. I believe that should be making its way to everybody now. I think consoles were just in the queue. They should be uploading over the course of the next sort of 12 hours or so. There was Midland Mainline improvements, and there were also improvements to my brain's called Linke Rheinstrecke with the 103 braking physics as well. So there's quite a lot in there. Check out the patch notes for more information on those. We're delighted to kind of be able to bring those over to you just before the roadmap launched. The other kind of headlines really are that the Class 700 will be launching next Tuesday on the 11th of July. We'll talk a little bit about that. We've got a video for you, and we'll be chatting a little bit more about what you can expect. We have a preview for that on Thursday. That will be myself, Matt, and James making his RFTV debut. So everybody be nice. We'll also be we'll be talking a little bit more about that on Thursday. What else did we talk about? We've got a new livery and gameplay pack, which has been put on the roadmap from our friends at Skyhook. So as they're kind of continuing work on Midland Mainline, they've also put a US livery pack and scenario pack on the roadmap. Not too much information about that at the moment, but we will be sharing that as we go through. I think that's pretty much an update in full. There's a couple of interesting sections on things like how we make our builds, which is a really interesting read, actually, if you've got a little bit of time to spend reading it, because we get a lot of questions about the process, how some of the pitfalls and some of the challenges that are associated with it. It's not just a case of us getting a build and throwing it straight out to you. We do have a few things that need to happen first and a few prioritization things that need to happen. We'll talk a little bit about some of those in a special section at the end. We also have a bit of time for a Q&A. And then I think we've got a couple of ambassador videos as well. It is the 4th of July, so we've got a US special for you tonight. We're going to be showcasing JimmyDali doing Harlem line, and also we have Ramagani doing the New York to Trenton route as well. So that will follow straight after we've done the roadmap tonight. But Matt, let's talk Class 700 to start off with, because we know it's been a hotly anticipated piece of content. We're really excited to be able to bring it to you. What are your kind of thoughts on where we're at with the 700, and how happy are you with it?
700 is fantastic. It's it captures a lot of the behavior. The 700 has got really, really interesting driving physics that are really badly understood even in the documentation. So it's been really interesting to capture. So when you apply the brakes, for example, just about every every car in it applies the brakes at a different level from what we can tell. It's really interesting trying to capture some of that behavior in there. And there's more detail on the screens. We actually were able to go to the Thameslink Training Centre and get in the cab of one of these and have a practice. Even I think a couple of guys even had a test drive on the training set on the training simulator. And we got a lot of insight as to what it can do and how it works. So we were able to get quite a deep simulation into this one. So I'm really pleased with it.
Good. Well, shall we show a little walk around video, a little teaser? We released this in the roadmap. We'll be putting it out as a proper video tomorrow, but you can get a first look at it now. You'd think OBS would remember our mic settings, wouldn't you? But apparently it doesn't. So when we move to something else, sorry everybody, we are. So that was the Class 700. We'll be doing a full preview of that on Thursday. A couple of questions about the audio, so it's probably a good idea to chat about audio now, Matt. It's a good opportunity for us to talk a little bit about how some of the sounds were sourced and kind of where we've been able to get those from.
Yeah, so we worked with Armstrong Powerhouse on some of the sounds, but we were able to get AC sound set through Armstrong, and obviously we need a DC sound set. It's two different systems on this train. And in our trips to record the 700, unfortunately, none of them were able to be moving trips, which rather limited things. So I gather that what the team have done is they've assembled audio from other sources, that sound a lot like a 700, but it's not actually recorded from a 700 because it's getting harder and harder to actually get out and record these trains on the main line for all sorts of very valid technical real world reasons.
Yeah, in terms of the end product, obviously everybody's just heard it there. Are we happy with the end result? Obviously we've got the AC side of things from sort of an external third party. The DC side of things is what players are going to be hearing the majority of the time they're on Southeastern. Are we happy with where they're at?
Oh yeah, I think actually this sounds. I mean, the beta team have also told me they got more direct experience with the 700s, including a couple of drivers, and they're very happy with how it's all behaving and how it looks. In fact, some of them are very excited by that, particularly how different, how contrasting the sounds are as well. So it's a really interesting train and a really good experience, I think. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And one other thing that is of note to mention that's from the roadmap side of things, obviously we mentioned that it's got AC and DC functionality, which is great if you want to port it onto and play it on other routes in the game. And that makes it a viable option to use in things like Scenario Planner and off-the-rails modes. The other thing that's worth mentioning is we've done a fair amount of testing over the course of the last week or so, and we found that on specific consoles we've been having some challenges with performance. So what we're going to be offering players is it going to be on launch, or is it something that
I don't know now at the moment? We're finalising the testing on it, so it's touch and go as to whether it'll make it on launch or be shortly after.
Yeah, what we're going to do is we're going to offer a full fat timetable, which is going to include everything. And there's going to be a slightly lighter timetable, which we're just finalising at the moment because we're still going through testing, which will be offering, I think it's things like static AI and some sort of more minor AI services.
Basically, for those of you running on in systems with less memory, this will mean that you can still enjoy the sort of the meat of the timetable with some of the ancillary stuff that's less important. It's the Red Rev's asking reduce the timetable for console only. It'll actually be offered as two separate timetables, and when you go into service mode, you'll just pick the one you want to use. There'll be an appropriate warning on the full timetable saying use this if you've got a machine that can cope.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's I think it's something that it's good that we've managed to identify now. We'll obviously keep you posted if that's something that isn't going to be available in the launch build, or it's going to come soon after. But the current plan is to incorporate it into the launch build so that players have the ability to swap between whichever one is most appropriate for their hardware.
Liam, no, like I said, no one is forced on that timetable. The journey will use the restricted timetable, but the full fat timetable available to everybody. So, for example, I suspect strongly that an Xbox One X will handle the full timetable perfectly fine because it's got lots of extra memory. But a Series S will struggle. A Series X should be fine. A treat actually. But it'll be there so that you can pick which one works for you. If you find that the big timetable's unreliable, then you've got the other one to use. But it's there for you to have a look at.
Yeah, it's kind of a fail-safe option, really, isn't it? If you absolutely need it. But that's an important note to mention. And if there are any changes to the current plan, we'll let you know when we get to the launch on the 11th, next Tuesday.
Yep.
So that's the Class 700. Appreciate people have got quite a few questions about the Class 700. We do have the preview stream on Thursday. We'll be able to go into a lot more detail about the kind of the southeastern side of things, how it all kind of fits together, as well as also the Loco itself and how we've been able to kind of build it, some of the different functionalities from within the cab, because it's got quite a few nice little features, and as well as also you get to see it in action as well in its kind of native environment. So stay tuned for Thursday. Set your alarms. It's 7 p.m. British Standard Time or 1800 UTC. So yeah, make sure you are around for it. But that is the Class 700. Thank you for your questions so far. And yes, we'll be covering a little bit more on Thursday. I know that we have James in the chat who's going to be joining us as well. So he might be able to mop up a few of the early questions as well if you've got them. Thank you, James. Okay, let's move on to quickly talk about the US gameplay and livery pack. Not really much to talk about right now because obviously it's still in fairly early stages in terms of developing. I think there is an update from Adam. Remember Adam?
Yep.
Adam. So Adam now works at Adam Lucas now works at Skyhook. So he was the one that provided us the update this time around. He's given us a quick little summary of where we're at with that pack if you are interested. But we'll talk a little bit more about it when it's closer to release. The update today, there was quite a considerable update, particularly something that we have been wanting to get out for an awful long time, the HST Livery Designer functionality. Now, that is something that we have been struggling to get through. Matt, I know you had a little bit of personal hell last week trying to get the last few things sorted in preparation for release.
Yeah, with the Livery Designer, the HST livery designer support for some reason just wasn't working on Gen 8 consoles, and so I had to diagnose what was going on with that one, got that one fixed and everything rebuilt, and yeah, we're on. That's why it's out now. Absolutely.
So yeah, thank you, Matt, for spending some of your time to get that out of the door. We've seen some good reaction to it already. There are a couple of things that that didn't pass the testing side of things, so we've kind of taken them back, some of the numbering side of things. So we've taken those back, and we're going to be taking a look at them. But there are a couple of additional changes to GWE as well. I think there's some substitution changes as well, which should now allow some of the scenarios and services that weren't able to be completed now as well on Great Western Express. So a good update there. Linke Rheinstrecke, main sort of headline really is the 103 physics improvements, the braking improvements. I saw a couple of initial bits of feedback from players that they were having a much more or a much better experience. But if you're seeing things and you'd like to let us know a little bit more about them, then please feel free to do so on our forums and on the on our forums or anywhere else that we have communications on. So any of our social platforms, any of the Discords, anything like that, we're always watching. And the final update was obviously Midland Mainline. Now we know that there've been a few people have been waiting for this, and we'll talk a little bit more about sort of builds and how that kind of comes into being a little bit later on in the roadmap. But the Midland Mainline patch has come out. It improves some of the PIS systems, TBWS issues that players were experiencing, and a few other bits and pieces that we wanted to bring over to you in sort of one patch rather than sort of having two smaller patches. And there was obviously a couple of issues with Southeastern a couple of weeks ago when we launched an update, which we wanted to make sure we sorted and fixed before we then got anything else out. So those are out with you, or they should be coming out to you over the course of the next few hours if you're on console. Steam players should have those already, and Epic players already too. So yeah, hope you enjoy them. That's the update coming. That's the update that came today. We'll also be having over the course of July the next update. We're looking at Niedertalbahn, the post-release improvements for Niedertalbahn. I think there is a Peninsula Corridor improvement as well, Matt. But you might be able to give more information on that than I can.
Can't remember what that is.
Is it the timetables?
Honestly, can't remember what the update was.
Okay.
So many updates.
We'll come back to you on that one.
I don't think it's the update everyone wants to see on Peninsula Corridor at the moment, though.
Okay, fine. So that's probably going to come a little bit later. But there is a Peninsula Corridor element to that, and I think there are some tutorials that we're looking to improve as well that are currently uncompletable. So those will be the ones that we're looking out for at the moment. And then obviously we have a few other bits and pieces that are still a little bit nebulous as to when we are going to be able to get them out. But obviously we'll talk about a little bit more about those in a second. Let's go through Just Trains update. So I've seen a lot of people have been having fun trying to decode and have a bit of fun with the wordplay on the Just Trains update. They are doing really well. They're in the sort of the not the latter processes, but they're going through and they're starting adding some meat to the bones of the route, doing a really good job as far as I can tell.
Oh, yeah.
And we're looking forward to being able to announce the content when it's a little bit closer to release. But I don't know if you had any further points, Matt.
Not really, other than every build I see, it's looking better. It's coming along leaps and bounds.
And the Just Trains team as well have been really positive in terms of the amount of communication they'd like to be able to do with the community on the route as well. Obviously, you've seen they've done quite in-depth updates for the roadmap, but I'm sure when we come to announcing, they will also be doing lots of things on their own channels and their own website as well to kind of keep players updated on their progress. So keep an eye out for that. If you don't follow them on the socials already, then please make sure you do, because as I say, I think it's going to get quite busy when we announce. We had the update from Skyhook. We've kind of covered that with talking about the scenario and gameplay pack, and we've also covered the Midland Mainline update. Do we have any other further Midland Mainline content in the pipeline, Matt?
I don't know. I kind of want to say I think we've got it all back. We're all out at this one.
Okay, so I know that there was a few questions about if there's anything else to come, if there's anything else that is still in the works. I think as far as we're aware, we've got through and released everything that's passed through QA at this stage. We are aware that some players are still having slight issues with crashing on PS5. If you are having those issues, just so that we can log them a little bit better, I think Sony gives you the opportunity to customize the fields when you have a crash. If you could include something to do with Midland Mainline in the description, we'd be really, really appreciative, because it might help us to diagnose what is causing that particular issue.
Yeah.
We will of course investigate regardless. It just means that it might help us out a little bit more, because again, some of these things we can reproduce, some things we can't. So it depends very much sometimes on software and how many add-ons people have got installed and all that kind of jazz.
Yeah, there's so many variables.
Yeah, absolutely. So so that's kind of where we're at with Midland Mainline. As I say, we'd love people to try the patch today. Let us know what you think. Jane's obviously been very active on the forum thread, but we will make sure that in his absence, we will be sort of feeding back anything to the Skyhook team as well. Obviously, as I say, Adam is now there at Skyhook, so we already have a friendly, or we have many friendly faces at Skyhook, but we have somebody who has been on the Dovetail side of the fence as well, so we can make sure that we're sharing that information as much as we can do. Okay, and then final bits and pieces. TSW2 improvements. As per last month, we are looking for a suitable window with which to open them and release them, and that is not a kind of a cop out answer. It is quite a big job to pull all of this stuff together. And whilst we've had kind of a lot of things that have been being released, we feel like, as I say, that's something that we're going to be. We will release. It's just a question of, as I say, getting the headspace and the time to be able to pull all of the things that we need to into the right place and get it out there. And again, hopefully some of the content that we've talked about in the inside development section of this particular roadmap will give a little bit more insight into how some of that process works. That's the whole point of that section of the roadmap, really, is to give people a little bit of an insight really into how things, lifting under the hood, how things go. Is always difficult because when you're kind of the other side of the fence, it's very much more relatable. But I don't understand how certain other industry, I don't know what goes on behind closed doors in certain other industries, and some things that people do or say make little sense to me. So what we try and do is open that up a little bit to everybody. We hope you find those sections really useful because they're some of my favorite things that we include actually in the roadmap. So if you have any feedback or any other suggestions for things you might like to see us cover, then please let us know, because we can guess at what we think you might want to hear or might want to find out about, but it'd be great coming from you guys as well, if possible. All right, so let's talk about the section then, because I think obviously people can read, people can talk about it, and people can find out a little bit more about it from the actual article. But it's sometimes more helpful to have a bit of a discussion about it. It's sometimes really useful for us to be able to kind of hash it out on a stream like this as well. But Matt, I don't know if you were able to, by way of introduction, just talk a little bit about how we go about. So let's put a fictional scenario together. We've released a piece of content, and we've collated a series of improvements that we believe will improve the piece of content. Once those have been developed, what happens?
So once we've done the fixes and they've been submitted, we then need to. What'll happen is they'll get built automatically and made available to the beta team pretty much that evening, ready for testing, if not before then, because we can manually kick the builds off for that. So that'll go up to Steam Dev, and we'll get some early feedback over the course of the next couple of days from the beta team while we're waiting to get things into the QA team. To get it into the QA team, we've got to do builds. We've got to do 7 builds. So we've got to get all 7 builds done. So that's Xbox Gen 8, Xbox Gen 9, PS4 Gen 8, PS4 Gen 9. Actually, PS4 and PS5 both need 2 builds each, one for America, one for Europe. And then we need, obviously, the Epic Games build, the Windows build, and the Steam build. So they'll then go into QA, and then the QA team will then spread out and test the fixes on the platforms. So it's like one small fix has suddenly become 12 times that you need to test that fix, multiply up. So that then goes into QA. They will then do all of that testing. They may then have feedback or questions. So we'll go around a couple more cycles potentially of reviewing that feedback. And then once that's all done and the QA team are happy with it, we'll then have a sign-off review on that. And if we're all comfortable that actually it's in a good place, as far as obviously what we know, as you know, sometimes there are going to be unknowns there, but based on what we know, is it in a good place? And then if it's in a good place, we can then press the button, and then they can all get uploaded as final versions to various platforms.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we need to find suitable builds as well as part of that. So there will be times where we're able to release a piece of content that is kind of in isolation. So the Southeastern content, for instance, is a core improvement, and therefore needed to be kind of treated in isolation for most of the time that we were testing it and improving it. But there will be instances where we can group things together. And it makes more sense to group things together, both for efficiency purposes and also because there might be some kind of thematic link as well, which makes it relevant. Is that kind of how do we make those decisions? How do we decide what goes in and what doesn't go in from like an improvements perspective?
So there's the thematic side of it is kind of influenced by the fact that we can only do one thing at a time with a lot of the with all the platforms. So let's say, for example, we start doing the 700. Once we've started builds and certification on the 700, that's it at that point. The next update will have that in it. So you can't then sneak a patch in. So you've got to wait at that point, get that through and finished, and then it's right. But once that pack is out and the next pack, before the next pack goes in, you then have a little window where you can then look at stuff. And one of the challenges we have is that if we want content to go via Xbox beta testing, it has to be certed first, which means it's in that queue and locking that system up. So that the windows actually where you can do things are relatively small, which is why we try and batch them up and sort of, because putting like updates for 3 or 4 package products into one thing doesn't really add an awful lot to the workload compared to having one thing. Whereas putting 3 separate updates is quite a challenge to schedule in and amongst the other stuff that's being organised as well, because a patch will go through relatively quickly, but obviously the content plans take a bit longer because once they're certed, then they're blocking the queue essentially for until they're finished.
Yeah, I mean, there have been a few instances, I would say, the players have, I think, rightly called us out on things that are either constantly near the back of the pile or things that seemingly are taking longer than others to get through the process of being developed, tested, released. Obviously, we need to prioritize certain things, and we need to make sure that sort of the more kind of severe, more visible, more kind of, I guess, viable options are the things that kind of get shunted to the front of the queue. But are there any other considerations that would mean that something either gets pushed back in the priority listing or gets shunted forward?
So we take into account how many players is it affecting, and because we can see, how many people are affected, or waiting for those patches to go out, and try and prioritize the ones affecting more players, but also need to factor in how long those players have been waiting as well. But then there's also a factor of what's the risk of certain changes. We've seen, if they say, for example, you roll in some fixes as part of a DLC release. Anything goes wrong with those fixes delays everything, all the other fixes and the DLC release, because it's one bundle. It's treated as essentially packaged in as one update. So we've got to play a fine line, and it's just like, because we don't know how you don't want to delay a much sought after fix for a much less sought after but much more risky fix. And it's trying to balance that out, because you also don't want to not do the riskier fix. They still got to get done and got out. But it's finding a right balance, and it's a really careful, and sometimes the batching that we'll do will be about matching risk, essentially, so that we'll try and sort of say, well, these things have gone out, they seem like they're stable, shouldn't have too much of an issue. Beta seems to have gone, okay, we're pretty happy with these ones, those ones can get batched together and go out. And some other changes, maybe they're slightly more of a concern.
Yeah, or they'd fail testing.
They fail certification, then that can then kick it all back to the beginning again.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it's trying to juggle some flaming knives whilst playing a game of Tetris, and trying to escape sort of a locked straitjacket underwater or something like that. It feels like it's a little bit of a complicated beast to get right. And I think we'll be the first to say we don't get it right all the time. No. But I hope that by us giving a little bit more context, a little bit more information, that some of the complexities that are a part of this process can be a little bit more understood, I guess. And when we're talking about things needing, say, suitable builds, or we're talking about things that have unfortunately been pushed further down the prioritization line, that there's a little bit more context to some of those discussions. Because I can appreciate it's really frustrating to hear the thing that I want isn't in, or it hasn't been released for X amount of time. Sometimes there are reasons for that, and we will go into those reasons as and when we can do, but there is also that kind of back end complicated, I don't fully understand, and I've worked here for nearly 2 and a bit years process, which involves us getting from something that is fixed through to players on a release day. So again, hopefully everybody's found that useful.
I just want to actually, Train Sim Cabs asked an interesting question. What happened with the first MML patch? Why did we only get half of it? As Jane had reported. So that was a misunderstanding. It wasn't half of it. It was the complete patch. So where things had got a little confused on that front was that the beta team hadn't received that particular update on the console, because we have to update the beta team separately. So the one of the beta testers reported a problem of something not being present, and then that made it look like the patch wasn't there. But actually, none of the retail players were seeing that particular problem. So I know Skyhook spent a lot of time looking into it and came to the conclusion that the bugs reported were all valid bugs with the patch. And that's what they've been looking to address, and that there wasn't actually an issue with the deployment of the patch. So it was just a misunderstanding and a confusion, because there is no one source of truth when it comes to a patch. We have to upload all of the patches to all the different branches as well. I think we maintain 3 or 4 branches now on Xbox, and they all have to be treated as separate things. So where I said you upload one to Gen 8, one to Gen 9, multiply that times 4 so that all of the branches get updated as well. So it's very there's a lot there to get done, and I think that the beta branch have been held back and not got to yet, prioritizing getting the retail one out, which seems odd. You think the beta would get it earlier, but in this instance, because of the timescales, it hadn't gone to the beta branch in the timescale needed. So that was just a confusion, I think, unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunate. Sometimes that kind of thing happens, but I think as we said, we believe that the majority, if not all, of the kind of things that have been submitted in terms of patches for the middle and mainline, at least from our perspective, are now out of the door.
Absolutely.
So we'll follow up with the Skyhook team separately, just see if there's anything that either we've missed or that they're currently working on, and obviously we'll update you in due course. Just a couple of other bits and pieces just to note before we get into some player questions. So if you've got some questions, then please let's have a think about them. Don't chuck them in the chat just yet, because I will probably miss them from the chat. But just a couple of other quick updates, because again, US 4th of July, everyone I'm sure is looking for a Trenton timetable update. Just kind of, I guess, segueing from the conversations that we've just been having around some of the complexities of different updates that we would include. Timetable ones are probably one of the more complicated ones, because it does it touches so many different variables, as well as also there are a couple of core improvements I believe that we've needed to implement as well to make sure that the timetable works correctly, which means that they then need to be tested quite extensively over the course of quite a prolonged period of time. So I don't know if is development finished on it yet, or is it in
not
the
quite, but it's down
stages?
to development of the last bits of statics now. So the beta team are playing with it on the with all the playable services in, and there is some feedback coming back on that. So there'll probably be some updates going to the beta team for continuing to that. But the goal was to get to this point with all the playable stuff in and get it in people's hands so that it's being tested by humans. Adding statics is a no risk activity. It won't cause any problems, so we can do that as and when, if not later on. But the it's doing well. I think the Cactus just says timetables are ridiculously complex. Cactus just knows he made the first cut of the Boston timetable.
Hi Brandon.
And he says can't stress that enough. Super fragile and take a long time to make. So they're they can be they're tricky. They take a long time.
Yeah.
I think the Trenton timetable is at 5 hours to simulate now, which is ridiculously long.
Yeah, and that's auto testing, right? That's that 5 hour simulate to auto test, right?
It's not really. We don't consider it auto testing, but it is to some degree testing as well. It's not its goal.
Yeah, so every time we make an improvement or a change, we then
make any change for any purpose, you have to resimulate the timetable for 5 hours, which then works out where everything is. The simulation of a timetable, its ultimate goal is it provides all of the data that lets you spawn into the timetable at any point in the day, and it knows exactly where all the trains should be and what they're doing, rather than trying to guess it. So you have to do that. Now, as a side effect of that, the auto testing element comes in because, well, if every train gets to where it's going at the end of the day, having gone all around and spend its day travelling, well, you've got a working timetable as well. So
Yeah, so I suppose that's a really long-winded way of saying it's still in development.
Yeah.
The team are looking at it, and we want to try and make sure, as I say, bearing in mind it's been a little while since we've released Trenton. Anyway, we want it to be as good as it can be, and as comprehensive an update. Would have loved to have released it on the 4th of July, wouldn't we? Would have loved to.
God,
I mean, so much thematic sense, but unfortunately, sometimes things don't quite.
Rather
work out
than
like
rush
that.
it out and wish we hadn't.
Yeah. Absolutely. So
It's a good update. You'll enjoy it when it comes, but let's give it time to be right.
Yeah, and actually, one of the ambassadors will be playing in New York, Trenton later. Won't have the updated timetable, but they'll be running through a few bits and pieces as well. So if you've not seen it or you want to try it, then again, hold fire, because I think in about an hour and a bit's time we'll be showcasing that. Okay, so let's talk. Let's get some player questions. I think. Oh no, sorry. The only other thing would be the German Loco. Same as last month. There is still work ongoing, and we'll update in due course. So thanks everybody for bearing with us. Okay, let's go for some questions. Actually, you know what? There is a really good point, actually. Train sim cab rides. We don't really tend to go backwards in the roadmap too often, but he says, totally off topic, Glossop is a great little route. Feels like Peak Forest, robust and relatively issue-free. Well, I mean, that sounds like a ringing endorsement to
Thank
me.
you. Yeah.
No, it's nice. I mean, we've seen some really good feedback from Glossop.
Some great screenshots as well.
Yeah, and we wanted to kind of say thanks everybody, because we've seen a few kind of, obviously you guys are allowed to talk and give us some feedback and criticism on the things that we don't do quite so well. So it's nice to see quite a few threads and comments and reviews and things like that cropping up for Glossop and Peak Forest as well. It's just nice to see some sort of some of you having a really good time with that particular route, and we wanted to try some new things. We wanted to push the envelope a little bit with the route, bearing in mind it is a fairly short route, but we think that, as I say, things like the guard scenario, photo scenario, having a few other kind of little quirks in there and really kind of making it a really refined, robust route, it seems like it's paid some dividends.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really happy with the feedback that there's a lot of people enjoying the on-guard scenario. And in fact, it seems like some of the strongest feedback coming on the route is, why is it so short? In terms of the on-guard scenario,
which is the best kind of feedback I think.
Yeah, we want
really.
more is what we wanted to hear in terms of that. So I have instructed the gameplay team to do more on the guard scenarios and to factor it into everything we do from now on. So guard scenarios are a thing going forward.
Apparently there's a good reply to the Glossop feedback thread by a driver that drives it, worth looking at. I will do that, Tim Plays Life. Thank you very much. We'll take a look at that at some point. Always nice to get reviews from people that actually drive the lines themselves. That's always encouraging to hear. I think we've had some lights come on in the background.
They do randomly go off and on.
Apologies that you don't worry, there are no ghosts here. It's just that there's some random light switches apparently. Okay.
One day we should look at changing the tone on these cameras, because we both look red.
Yeah,
I'm a lot less red than this, and I guess this is looking a little bit redder than normal, but that's because of the sun.
We should get some people, but like there were some people that go on to do like TV shows and that they get all like their full like face done and things like. Maybe we should start demanding that when we
should demand makeup treatment. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. There was a question about pre-ordering for the 700. No, there isn't a pre-order for the 700. I believe the pricing is, I think it's £12.99,
yes.
$15.99 and euros and $16.99. The actual price, if I've got that wrong though, is on the roadmap, and we'll be talking about it in the the preview stream on Thursday too. Cool. Okay. We took some questions from the forum thread earlier. We'll also be taking your questions from the chat, so please feel free to put those into the chat now. Again, same kind of general questions are appreciated, things that we can offer a little bit more insight and feedback into and have a bit of a discussion around, rather than kind of either simple yes, no answers, or is this coming or is this not coming, because the answer will likely be, if it's not on the roadmap, it's not been confirmed. And I don't want to be that guy this week. Please don't let me. Okay, so we have question number one from Old Vern. Any updates from Union Workshop or TSG on their respective projects?
I don't have any updates that I can share, unfortunately. I know that they are continuing to make good progress. I now know what route Union Workshop is making, so hype. I know TSG have got a number of projects on the go, including the 420, which is actually very, very close now in terms of, I think the train itself is done, and well, mostly done, and then moving on to gameplay. So it's lots of things progressing. Nothing material, unfortunately, at this point. So
No, I mean, and the TSG team, for instance, as well, are great at what they do, and therefore we pull them into our clutches on occasion when we need a little bit of help with some stuff as well. So
yeah, I mean, a lot of the content that you play, if it's German, probably has had TSG's involvement in it. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff going through. So big shout out to Mike and the others at TSG. Actually, they do an absolutely fantastic job for the whole community.
Absolutely. Bad Guy 89 asks a question that I don't think I'm going to be able to give a satisfactory answer to, but I'll try and answer. It's to do with, I'm not going to kind of call out all the questions, it's quite a long one, but basically to do with pricing on different platforms. And yeah, I can appreciate that it's a little bit different on certain platforms. That is unfortunately what we have to work with. The retail team do their best to try and ensure we get parity across all the platforms that we release the game onto, but some of them have slightly different pricing matrices and things like that that make it so that unfortunately that isn't the case all of the time. And we can't really do things like discounts with launch content when we haven't got them for other pieces of content as well. So hope you understand. It's not a limitation. It's not something that we like doing, but it's something that is a bit of a platform limitation. Unfortunately, we do work closely with the likes of Sony and Xbox and Microsoft and Valve, but they do have certain pricing models and structures that we kind of have to adhere to, unfortunately. You're about to jump in, Matt. Did you have a question that you wanted to grab? Okay,
No.
Cool. Okay, let's talk. I'll probably bundle these next two questions together because I think they're probably going to have the same answer. But there were a couple of questions in the forum thread around updates on save game and also red light issues.
Yeah, so we're continuing to look at where save game and red light is all down in the content at this point. So yeah, you hopefully over a course of time see individual fixes for specific things at this point, rather than any big sweeping fix. We've done the big sweeping fix. If investigations point to a big sweeping fix, obviously we'll do that. But at this point, it's in content. But I've not got anything to share in terms of next fixes.
Cool. Okay. A couple of, again, so yeah, we'll be looking at those on a case-by-case or route-by-route basis. So we are checking so there are a couple of threads on the forums that we do regularly check in and make sure that we're reporting the issues that you guys log on there to our internal sort of bug tracking system so that then we can review and follow them up separately. So a couple of questions about different locos, I guess. So Pessy asks about, now I saw a couple of questions about Brighton Mainline in general, but rear doors, I think it's 377 on Brighton Mainline. Someone was asking about, there's a rear door glitch on Brighton Mainline on 377.
Oh.
I'm guessing it's a 377, but...
Don't know.
Okay. We'll follow that one up separately.
Give me some info on that one.
Okay, and class 385 sounds. Is there any update on us gathering any more source material for those?
Still waiting on getting the trip organised for that one. It's not cancelled or abandoned. We're just waiting for for it all to get greenlit. Organising these trips takes ages. Yeah, we're just waiting for that one to get sorted, and then we'll be able to go back up there.
Yes. Yeah, it's important. Actually, you know what? I'm going to kind of move away from player questions, and I'm going to ask my own question for this, because we talk about things like research trips and going on that kind of thing fairly, not regularly, but we talk about gathering resource material. And obviously the best way that we can do that is by going to partners and going to the actual, seeing them in action and recording them in action and whatnot. So what does a typical kind of research trip look like for us? I know that we've done one in the past for, what was the last thing that I can think of that we did one for?
We did Caltrain. God, there's all sorts. The team are all over the place, sometimes gathering reference. So a normal reference trip, it depends where you're going. You'd be, I mean, we went up north to do the first pass of the 385, where we got access to the depot so we could do interior and static recordings. And I guess no matter where you're going, essentially it's going to be getting to site or getting to a hotel the night before. If it's a long distance trip, then probably a massive box of audio equipment being shipped from a local supplier awaiting you at the hotel. Fingers crossed. That didn't happen on one trip. That was a bad trip. Then the team will take that equipment. And when I say a box, I mean like 2 suitcases worth of audio equipment. This is not a small amount of kit. And they'll take that onto the site. They'll get an introduction tour, and they'll be shown where they're going to be working. Is this train going to do these things? And then it's just going to be they'll be wiring up microphones to it, or depending on what they're going to do. If it's just a static train, then obviously they'll have the microphones, and they'll click all the switches and try and make all the buzzers and alarms and all of the systems do what they need to do. Self-test modes and so forth, so they can. What they'll also do is they'll try and get GoPro footage from what's going on at the same time, and they'll use also, because it's not just an audio trip. There also then someone will go around and take photographs. On a recent trip, they did nearly 10,000 photographs just of the train, not of the route, just of the train. And I'm not exaggerating, that nearly 10,000 is very nearly 10,000. So it was, so there was an awful lot there's going on all the time with these things. So you normally need 2 audio engineers. You want someone who's, just to support each other. It's a little bit too much. One person can do it, but really you want 2 people. And then you've got one person normally who's there doing real vehicle art capture.
Yeah.
Who can then, and the pictures that you take is, they're not the things that you see on Flickr and photo. We want to know what it looks like, what all the roof detail looks like, what all the underframe detail looks like, and what the back of the cab looks like. No one takes pictures of backs of cabs. It's like they don't exist. So it's there's all sorts of the pictures that we don't get. The floor, there's another thing no one takes pictures of. Under where the feet and your knees go in the cab, all of these things that we have to model and we have to get right. And there's buttons and switches down there. There's foot pedals for horns. What does that look like? And if we miss that sticker, so we need to make sure we get as much of that detail as possible in, and that's what the team do on those trips. That's where all of these photographs come from. So they take an absolute load of photographs, and then for the last thing they'll do is we've got a 360 degree video camera, and what they'll do is they'll hold it up and they'll just walk slowly down the train. So you can then, what it means is that they can. When they get back to the office, they can effectively walk up and down and look around the train at any point they want to in the carriages. It's a very clever way of with that. And that probably saves another 10,000 photographs, to be fair. But it's an awful lot of very handy, because again, you just slide the video forward to the bit and then scroll it around to see the bit that you want to see.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's really interesting. In fact, to be honest, I didn't know much about the reason. That's why I asked the question. It's interesting for me as well. It sounds like. We're like internally we're like, oh, they're going for a little jolly, they're going for a little holiday, but it sounds like it's anything but.
Do not let that team hear anyone say anything about going on a jolly. It is not uncommon for them to take a week off work after they come back.
I think our lead audio engineer actually got quite unwell last time.
Got very unwell on his last trip.
The way back,
it was because they were having to do recordings day and night.
Yeah,
because of the different services, and on some of the train services, they could only be recorded in the depot between the hours of midnight and 6 a.m.
Yeah,
so they were doing work during the day and work during the night, and it was hard. They got lots of stuff. It's a really good trip, but they were not on a jolly. They were working very, very hard.
Yeah. So they obviously that it sounds like it's an absolutely vital part of. And actually, someone in the chat mentioned that, of course, we did it for Spirit of Steam.
We did it for Spirit of Steam. Yeah. We also did a talk about this stuff, actually, where someone's saying here we talked about Caltrain, and when we went to we took a trip to Washington, 2013, 2015, something like that. Okay. And that was the sounds that went in the ACS 64 and the Amtrak Acela. That came back with so much stuff.
So we'd also take the opportunity when we were there to kind of, like, I guess, bank any everything and anything we possibly could do, just in case, on the off chance that anything in the future were to need those audio or need any of those visuals.
Yeah, well, it's the opportunity. If something is there, then obviously you get permission. You don't just go wandering around a depot. These are dangerous places, and we're there with permission, and they've usually got an escort with them. They've always got an escort with them. But also, what you find is these people are actually fans of what we do, and so it's really interesting to see. So can we go and get that? Yes, we can. And wander over there, and then another 3,000 pictures of a coach, or something up here, and recordings of a door squeaking open and closed, and all sorts of things. So they'll get absolutely anything and everything they can within the confines of what their depot. And so sometimes it's a very strictly scheduled, timed trip, and they have to adhere to a specific schedule. Other times it's right. What do you want to do?
Yeah.
And we'll just work with them. They're very busy people, and very, very grateful for the support we get. Actually, it's what allows us to get things to this level. And we try and get recordings as much as we can for everything we can. One of the reasons we went for the 700 to the training simulator was because at that point we weren't sure if we were going to get access to the real 700. So we took the opportunity to go to the training simulator, and then an opportunity came up to go and get recordings from the real 700. So it's kind of like the team will grab every opportunity they can get.
That's really interesting. Thanks for that, Matt. I hope everyone at home found that interesting as well, because as I say, I work here and I didn't realise that was the intricacies of how things went on. So a lot of work goes into it, a lot of effort goes into making sure those things happen. So that's good. Okay. And Kruger says, you guys look well sunburned. I can promise you we are not. It is the terrible lighting in here that we need to sort.
Combination of terrible lighting and the fact that it was 31 degrees the other day, and that's enough to make an Englishman go pop.
Yeah, we don't do well with sun and heat, unfortunately.
There's been no holidays, trust me.
Yeah, definitely not been on holiday. Okay, so a question that I've asked, I think, for the last couple of roadmaps is around AIPIS on some of the, particularly I think the British routes. I think Birmingham Cross
specifically
City.
On Southeastern and Cross City.
Yeah, is there an update on that at all?
There isn't an update on that one. Yeah, it is on the radar of the team. And then they've got it resolved on future routes. It's something in the way that the trains are set up. They're not initializing properly. So it's on their radar to look at. I don't have an update at the moment for when that's coming.
Okie doke. Had a lot of questions in the forum thread about medals and scoring system and unachievable golds. I think there was a couple in Glossop when we launched with. Now, I think when we've spoken on the roadmap previously, we've spoken about having some kind of I guess it's not something that's likely to be resolved on a route by route basis. It's kind of like what we've looked at before when we've talked about things like red lights, and
we're investigating a couple of different options on the scoring thing. There is a potential option which might allow us to do a central fix. But it comes with a bag load of extra risk and things that need to be checked and thought about and worried about. The content fix comes with virtually no risk and worry, but comes with the need to content fix everything that's wrong. It's this fundamentally what's wrong is it happened is the score estimator and the thing which actually gives you the score in the game aren't reading from the same scorebook. So it's a minor miss, but it's enough of a miss. So we're looking at the right fix for that one at the moment.
Okay. So yeah, not something that we've forgotten about or ignoring, but it requires a bit more. It requires a bit more thought, I think, as to what.
It's funny because if there's a way we can do a centralized fix, it hits everything in one go. But we need to just work out what could go wrong with something like that, because then you'd be affecting every scenario in every service and everything. And if all you do is if you make it wrong in a different way, then it's just more broken. So we just want to be really, really careful if we look at something like that, or whether we play it safe and do content fixes.
Okay. Seems fair. And again, it's worth putting that in the context of the conversation that we had probably about 20 minutes ago about putting everything into or organising kind of the backlog and organising the patch lists and getting builds out and things like that. These kind of conversations are all interlinked together. Cool. Okay. JD or Matt, can you let us know how many playable timetable services for Trenton to New York Penn Station? I don't think we have that to hand. We can ask that because I'm sure when we get to a point where we're ready to release it, we will
give you all the vital statistics because it's still
info.
potentially changing at the moment. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I can't remember what it is currently. Someone will be able to tell you what it is currently.
No.
But what it's going to be, let's give you that once it's finished.
I mean, I could have a guess, but I mean,
it's quite a lot.
It's a lot, yeah. It's
quite a lot. It's every Amtrak service, every NJT service. It's an awful lot.
Yeah, I mean, if you haven't checked out Joe's articles from the last couple of roadmaps, they give a little bit more detail.
I think he did a breakdown as well.
He did do a breakdown.
Yeah, there you go. So the answer's probably in one of those recent articles.
I tell you what, let me find this.
He's fired up a web browser, folks.
Oh. Feel for me, Matt. Feel for me.
Feel for you. Right. Ask questions, folks. What am I looking at?
Oh, actually, I can ask you a question now.
Oh, Reese Lampard is in the chat. He's one of the audio team. Welcome, Reese. Thank you for everything you do.
Hey, Reese.
I don't know if Nick is still here. Nick was on earlier on as well.
Yeah,
welcome, Nick.
DTG loving tonight, isn't it?
I know.
Okay, a question about night lighting and consistency of night lighting. From Matt Goggles, whilst I search and find that answer.
It's something the team are working on improving. It's because it needs to be done on a per asset basis, and we're not doing as good as we need to at the moment, bluntly. So it is something that that we need to improve on, and we will improve on.
Yes. Oh God, it's a really long update. Joe, why did you do this to me?
Joe provides excellent updates.
He does. He really does. I actually don't know if we gave a number in that article, but we will do. When we get
WMG, what's happening with missing DLC on Xbox, TSW3, WSR, TGV, etc.? I'm not aware of any missing DLC. No. Can you raise a support ticket so that it can go through the proper channels? And we'll try and help you. I suspect that's more of a local issue for your setup, perhaps.
Yeah, please contact support. If you've got any problems like that, it's more easily diagnosable by the support team than it is by the two of us on a live stream, because you'll be able to provide a bit more information. We can ask the relevant questions and whatnot rather than trying to diagnose it live on air. So, yeah, contact the support team on our website and they'll be able to give you a little bit more guidance.
Hey, with Sunnyside, you're back in use with the Trenton line. Have you thought of getting the Amtrak switcher back again? So switcher technically doesn't belong in that yard. It's Washington switcher and isn't even used there. Hasn't been used there for quite some time. And I think the feedback was generally that, it was great to have the switcher. It was the first of the US switchers we did, actually. The SW1000R, is it? But it's at sort of 5-10 miles per hour. It probably wasn't the most exciting thing in the world to do as well. So I want to do something with it because it was a good model, but I'm still trying to hash out a good way of using it. Because the SW1000R was built out of the SW9s, if I remember rightly, so that there might be some way of taking it forward into something new, different, and a bit more fun. So I'm got my thinking cap on, trying to come up with ideas in the wider context of some of the other stuff I'm thinking of. But as and when at this point, no, there are no immediate plans for that. I share the desire to bring it back because it was fun, but it's finding the right place to do that.
Yes. Questions on. So there's a lot of talk about sort of 700 on Brighton Main Line or London Commuter, as it's known to its friends. And we were going to kind of try and cover this in the preview stream, but it's worth sort of talking about now. We don't currently have plans to incorporate it into the Brighton Main Line timetable. We still need. It's kind of a similar problem to what we were seeing with sort of rush hour passengers in that. It needs some memory optimization. We've made some optimizations since the route's come out, but it needs to have a bit more of a drastic overhaul. And at the moment, that's not currently something that we're working on before we add more stuff onto it.
Yeah, we need to. We've got a number of things we want to look at on London Brighton at some point. I don't have a timeline for when that will happen, before we can think of adding quite a big train. In fact, the version that runs on Brighton Main Line is the /1, which is the 12 car version, the FMU, whereas we've got the RLU. FLU, is it? FLU. It's a full-length unit, whereas we've only got the RLU, 8-car unit, I think it is. So we'd have to model the extra cars, and it's not just copy-pasting the existing ones. They're different cars, as typically there would be the case. That makes it quite a memory expensive unit, that one. So we need to do quite a bit of chopping to try and make that fit. So I don't know when we're going to get there. And I'm going to be honest, if we're going to get there. So rather than not do a 700, that's why we put the 700 on Southeastern. And then, of course, you can then use it on Scenario Planner on Brighton. So it allowed the product, it allowed the 700 to be a thing. We can, and then we can see if we get the opportunity to, which I would dearly love to do, then great, we can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Red Bus actually asked, Matt, will you stream again at some point?
I am planning on.
We were talking about this earlier, weren't we?
Yeah, I've been thinking about getting my own streams running again and having some just sit and chill and play the game, because I miss. One of the reasons I used to stream and just sit and do my own sort of play the game for 4 or 5 hours of an evening was because it was my time to just relax and enjoy the game and chat with the community. Without getting too serious and just talking trains, having good fun. I'm back to really missing it again. So it's kind of, now that I've kind of got my work schedule, I've got a bit of self-discipline now, so that I go home generally at a sensible time. It's kind of, and I have weekends. And it takes self-discipline. It's kind of like there's always more to do. There's always more I want to do. There's more testing that can be done. So I'm trying to have that self-discipline to come home, so that I can potentially look at doing some streaming.
That's good. Yeah, and I think. I kind of second, hopefully, what everybody else is saying in the chat, where you need to make sure you look after yourself, Matt. Look after yourself.
Oh, yeah.
We just on the subject of streams, actually, we have got quite a full suite of live streams this week. If you missed yesterday's, we had some really nice feedback actually on it. It was Joe, who was new to Railfan TV, talking to Alex about some of the history and sort of life working at West Somerset Railway. Really insightful. I learned some stuff that I didn't know, and I've again known Joe at Dovetail for the since I've been here. So. A really interesting live stream. If you like that kind of thing, we'd love to be able to get more people who have got kind of, I guess, real life stories to be able to share on the Railfan TV. Whether that is us and like a Dovetail employee, but also maybe members of the community, our ambassadors, people who have got real life experience on the railways to come on and sort of support some live streams with us. We've also got later this week, we've obviously got the Class 700 preview. I think we were originally planning to do a physics live stream with James, not the same James that's going to be on the stream on Thursday. There are so many Jameses here at Dovetail, myself included. That's why I chose JD. But we might make that an article instead, and then save the live stream until we've had a little bit more time to prepare it. So just shouting that one out in advance. That one might not actually happen on Friday, but we have also got a livery designer live stream on next Wednesday, I think, as well. So we've got quite a lot coming up on the Railfan TV side of things. Hopefully some different stuff that you wouldn't normally see.
There's been some really cool stuff on the channel, so it's good to see.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, other questions? Sorry, I was too busy looking at questions on the chat, and I completely forgot to open up my script. So we'll probably have about another 5-10 minutes worth of questions, everybody. So last call for questions, because we've got a few on the in my script already. There is a question about how much value is placed on making sure that players can use their back catalogue for things like layers. There's a very long question from Matt Chester. I'm not going to read the whole thing out, but I'm trying to kind of précis it as much as I can do. Basically citing things like Glossop, which uses a lot of stuff, but perhaps missed an opportunity with, say, the Class 150. Peak Forest, not putting a 4F layer onto Liverpool Crew. I think they're slightly different scenarios, but it's worth, I think, talking about kind of our approach moving forward with how we want to treat this sort of thing.
Yeah, so there was actually 2 or 3 challenges wrapped up in that question. So one of them talking about, for example, the Northern 150. For a start, it's not our 150. That's Rivet's 150. So we can't just go taking people's stuff and doing things with it. It's also a different subclass, I think, than Northern Run. So it's at that point you're starting to get into a part build of a new train. So you're not just talking you reusing an existing train on a layer. You're talking about making a new train essentially, albeit not quite as much as the whole thing. Then things like the 4F back on Spirit of Steam, I would love to do that. What we normally, our normal approach is that when a new package comes out, we will bring as much of the historic content onto that new package as we can. What we don't do for various resource from time reasons is then go back to all of the old content and try and bring all of the new content back onto all the old content, just for practical reasons, I'm afraid. It's sometimes we get the opportunity to go back to relook at an old timetable. I know Joe has a couple of things up his sleeve he's been having fun with.
Tease.
One of the other gameplay team, they've been having some fun with another timetable as well. So there's a lot of passion projects going on that may or may not see the light of day, that are trying to do that. But in terms of scheduling that work, there's quite a lot of work involved in that stuff. So that's why we don't go to the older routes to bring the newer trains back to them as part of releasing the newer trains. It would be great to be able to do that, but actually in a lot of cases that is, like I said, timetables are a time-consuming thing to make, and gets very different.
Well, it's a very specialised skill, isn't it? I think if anybody ever wants, so there is I think it was probably about a year and a bit ago, we did a live stream on how we make timetables, and my mind has never been blown in a way that it has been when we did that live stream, and just how complex it is to try and put those things together. I know Brandon's already mentioned it in the chat, but it's not an easy job. So I can appreciate it's something that's
it's immensely fun. I mean, I've done several timetables in the past, and the gameplay team, sort of with Joe particular, but not just Joe, but others, work on timetables as well. And when I did it, I found it actually quite addictive. You're creating. It is such a it's a time-consuming process, but it's actually you have so much fun. When I added the all of the freight services onto Sandpatch Grade, I got so engrossed in following the story of this pair of locos around Cumberland Terminal, moving freight trains around, and I got really into it. And then of course, then you get past the creative bit, and then it's and now make it work. And that's where it starts getting simulate for 3 hours, come back, it failed there, tweak. Simulate for 3 hours. It failed there. Tweak. It's not quite as bad as it used to be, because we've got a compiler built into the timetable now for quite a while, and the compiler will tell you a lot of these things are wrong in the outset. And the compiler takes 10 seconds, unless it's one of Joe's timetables when it takes a few minutes. But it's still not 5 hours. So you can get some fairly quick answers, but then you still have to run it, and then all the timings don't quite fit. And that's something Moleman said earlier on, that you end up with a time where the train is arriving 1 minute past where it's supposed to, and that's a fail. That would be a service that spawns on foot. So it's readjust the timings, find out why it's late. Because this service got held up, tweak all of that. Right, we're good. Resimulate for 5 hours.
And it's failed here.
It's a very but sometimes the puzzle solving nature of why is that coming late? Actually they wouldn't run by that. Looking by the real time trains, or they actually run that service a different path, and that's where it gets in without getting blocked. So there's so much digging into this stuff and trying to get creative with the stuff.
Well, someone's, I think Calidor in the chat says assembling timetables seems like shunting trains together in the yard, and I think that's quite a good analogy. Actually, it's sort of it's that kind of puzzle solving element to try and allow access for other things to go through.
Puzzle solving, you're a detective, you're trying to figure things out. You can use RTT, real-time trains, or you can use the Deutsche Bahn equivalent, or there's less of it available for America, but you can use working timetables. But quite often, unless you can get access to the actual working timetable that they use actually for real planning, and those are incredibly difficult to get hold of for security reasons, then you're only getting 30%, 40% of the story on those websites, because the train went from A to B. But where was it before before King's Cross? Where was it? Before London St Pancras, where was it? Well, was it in a depot somewhere? Well, that doesn't go on to the public timetables. So it's navigating that, and when it gets to B, where does it go? You know, when the train gets to, you know, wherever it's ending, where does it go now? Oh, it goes, you know, you'll find sometimes a train it won't go back to a depot. It just goes over to this siding somewhere and sits there for a bit. And then after a little while comes to a different siding to get it out of the way of another service. And then later on comes back to the terminal to become a next train coming out. And you've got to follow these moves around. And it is quite intricate.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly sounds it. It certainly sounds it. And I guess kind of we've obviously talked about some of the things that we perhaps aren't going to be looking at, but also we want to talk about sort of our thought process moving forward as well, because I think the original poster talked about Glossop, talked about where's another good example of where we've kind of added extra gameplay onto it via Southeastern is obviously a really good example of that as well, where we've kind of built out the routes and we've provided more gameplay for people's back catalogues of content, their entire collections, and that's definitely something we're looking at doing. I think we talked in a previous roadmap about us favouring gameplay, and that's not necessarily gameplay in terms of that. I mean, it is, but in terms of like scenarios and sort of trying to fill out timetables as best we can. But it's also adding that extra layer of like, okay, we've got this thing that can fit in here and add a little bit more extra life and realism and authenticity to the route. It's going to take a little bit of time, but we're going to try and build that into the scope of the project to begin with.
Yeah, we're trying to add more and more and more into this stuff, and giving Joe and the rest of the gameplay team latitude to do that. I mean, someone said like to see timetables be prioritized, and they pretty much are.
Yeah, I was going to say the amount of time spent on timetables.
They have dedicated people given lots of time to work on this stuff, while the rest of the gameplay team work on things like the scenarios and the tutorials and so forth. So there is an awful lot of effort put into that timetable to make sure that is as good as we can reasonably get it. It's not always possible to make it as as detailed as we'd like to, but there's various reasons for that. Some of it's due to lack of data, some of it is just practically we had to fudge some stuff because we just couldn't figure out what was going on with these things, so we made it up. We made up the bridge between those two services, right, and then you get back on the timetable again. So I know it's been quite interesting doing that, and Joe and the team have got some really interesting new techniques they've developed for replicating real world timetables that they've done since I was doing it, and it's really fascinating actually watching the level of detail they go into, which just I wouldn't have even been able to.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to see if we can, if Joe's happy to be on a live stream to talk about some of this stuff, because obviously he can give the detail from, I guess, the coalface more so than maybe Matt or I can. So I think when we get to the point where, particularly the New York Trenton timetable is in a place where we want it to be, we'll perhaps talk to him a little bit more about how he's made it and how he's put it all together.
So Annika Stanger, a different topic, as I got to ask my signature again, any update on the API development? So this, I'm assuming you mean, is the external hardware interface for like joysticks and so forth. I don't have an update for you. It's in with the test team, the beta team have got it, and it's more a question of now just seeing what damage you can do to the game. What else do you think you should be able? Well, it is if you can hit that API hard and actually cause the game damage.
That is what QA basically do. They try and break the game.
Exactly. So what can you do? What can a badly behaved application do? And what kind of guidelines should we give developers using this? Like, don't call this function more than 1 billion times a second, please. It will cause a problem. I'm sure the number will be lower than that. So we're trying to refine that out, and also work out what functionality is it missing. It's like it does an awful lot, but if it doesn't do 100% of at least one thing, then it's no use to anybody. So it's kind of like making sure that this has got a lot of decent use cases that work well. So it's no big update for you, but not forgotten, still going on.
Yeah, so it's a sleeper project. That was a good question that I've just not. I've got two more questions. Okay, one of them is one that I picked up earlier, which is around passengers and passenger update, because we've obviously talked quite a lot about, I guess, making the route feel more alive, and one of the ways that obviously that is manifested is in passengers and passenger behaviour, and I think we've seen, because we updated passenger behaviour for rush hour, and that was probably about a year and nearly coming on for 2 years ago now. Is there anything in the pipeline to improve sort of passenger behaviors? Because again, it's not, by the sounds of things, it's not a route by route thing. It sounds like it's a core improvement that would cover all of the different eventualities that would you would see in game.
We need to take a hard look at the passenger system, because we're using the NPC character system inside Unreal in Unreal Engine 4, and much more than we're doing at the moment starts to get towards needing to have a major rethink about that whole character system. And whether or not it needs to be a crowd system or some of these other different approaches that are available, and what challenges as well as benefits that will bring, particularly around performance, but also around functionality. So it's something on our minds. I don't have an update on it or a plan particularly, but it is certainly something being talked about, because we see the passengers doing crazy things as well, or not doing anything at all, when it would just be interesting if they were doing something. Or getting off the train for no apparent reason. It's something we want to see what we can improve. But when we have any news on that, I'll let you know. Yeah,
I imagine it might be a series of tweaks rather than anything that's like a full rework, I would guess. But
potentially.
Okay. There was a question that I meant to ask in relation to the layering chat, actually, because we've seen a little bit of discussions that we've talked about, sort of including more gameplay. There might be some layers that are, let's say, more realistic than others. There are some stuff that's perhaps anachronistic, or perhaps not necessarily relevant for that particular area, or it's not in exactly the right kind of Loco to be fitting that job description. There's been a few questions asking about toggling layers, and I wanted to just quickly ask now, is it a technical possibility, and B, is it something that we would consider?
Yes, it's a technical possibility, and it's something I want to do. It's not something on a radar to do at the moment, but it's something I want to get onto the radar to be getting done, because I don't think it's particularly hard either. So I'm going to...
People are going to hold you to that, Matt.
That's fine. I'm not making a promise as to when or if it will come. I'm just saying it's probably not a hard thing to do, and I'll see what I can do about that.
Okay, yeah, that's true. And then the final question, so that is for people who have been asking about toggling layers. It sounds like it's possible. It sounds like it's something that is desirable. It's just about understanding sort of the UI implications, the tech implications that would be needed in order to make it reality.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the final question I'm going to take from the chat. So get your chat questions ready for tonight. Throw them in there. Go on. Last chance, everybody. One more question. Actually, no, you know what? Mod Derek, I'm going to take your one. Are there new third-party developers beginning to make work on TSW content? So we've obviously know about Alan Thompson Simulations. We know about Union Workshop. We know about TSG. We've obviously got Skyhook, Rivet, and have I missed anybody?
Possibly, but I can't remember.
Possibly. But is there anybody else that we can look forward to? Not naming any names, but are there anybody?
Yeah, there's one fledgling group getting on with something
Just
pretty
Trains.
exciting.
Sorry, that was Just Trains, of course. Of course, Just Trains.
Oh, my word. Thank you,
Jason.
And THF. There's one small group that are getting started on some pretty fun stuff. Don't think anybody else at the moment.
Okay, cool. Thanks everybody for reminding us that we missed Just Trains despite talking about them fairly lengthily earlier on in the stream. It's been a long day, everybody. And the final question, because someone's also highlighted that it's a good question, is Chief Longshin asks, so any closer to more route extensions following the success of, they put SEGM, but I don't know if that means Southeastern High Speed.
Where's the question?
This one here.
I imagine that's that. Yeah.
No,
is the short answer to that question. It was a really
pregnant pause. Then that one.
I was just trying to think. It was a really interesting opportunity to do an extension as part of the core update. with TSW3, and I don't know. I think there is a desire to do extensions. There's just practical challenges around it that we're trying to work out.
Well, from what I can gather, I know that when TSW3 was released and we had Southeastern on there as an extended route, my understanding is that it took just as much time as creating a new route. When you added sort of things in, you had to go back and change things, you had to update things to kind of modern, like to the updated standards. By the time we kind of looked at it, actually that took about the same amount of time as...
Yeah, well, we took the route up to by about another 45 miles in the end, and did a pass over the existing scenery. So it was, but you ended up with a double the normal size route, essentially.
Yeah.
So.
And I think what we saw was that there was quite a lot of resistance actually from players when we announced TSW3.
I was surprised how much negativity there was about it, actually.
Around the fact that it was something that was extended and didn't feel new and didn't feel kind of that exciting or enthralling. And obviously we've built on it since then, and there's been some really interesting things that we've been able to add to it. I'd say it's probably the most interesting route in terms of...
without a doubt. With all the layers on it now, it's. I think Joe told me earlier on that that route has got something in the order of 40 layers on it.
Yeah.
You know, that's not just the DLC combination. We now use layers for making, like, you'll find groups of freight trains on one layer, and so like the base of the pack might be across 7 or 8 layers. So, but still 40 layers. That's insane. So it's certainly the busiest, most realistic route in terms of traffic. Yeah,
and we've seen good feedback from it since it's released, and I think it's that kind of question mark of actually, is this something that I guess is going to capture hearts and minds in a way that a new route would, for the amount of time and effort that's gone into it. And and it's not just a case of us building 40 miles of extra track, it's making sure that the timetables all coincide and fit with each other.
The timetable was completely brand new. The extra track, but then as someone commented earlier on, there was quite a lot of work done on the existing stuff that was, train track that was relayed on the existing section to iron stuff out. So I'm really happy with what we ended up with, kind of the best of Southeastern high speed. It was always one of my favourite routes, even back to Trenton Classic where it first came out. So really happy with that. Not just because it's a local route, it is just a really fun route with so much variety on it.
Yeah, and I think, as I say, it's not something that we are ruling out, but it's not something that at the moment we have any plans to do for any of the existing routes in TSW. So hopefully that's given a bit of insight into some of the thought processes involved in some of those sorts of things, because it's not a decision that we take lightly. And again, as we said, Southeastern is probably one of our stellar routes now as a result of us having this change, but it wasn't without its challenges, it wasn't without its problems, and it's whether it's worth the time spent on it to get it to that level, which is essentially the amount of time we'd spend making something else that might appeal to a different group of people.
Yeah, it's what you're going to get out of it at the end. Pessy there says we'd love to see an extended Great Western. That's the one route you probably won't ever see extended. Because
sorry, Pessy.
It was the first. It was route number 2 in Trainsim World, route number 1 in the UK, and so much of it would need chucking and putting the new way of doing things. It's almost built for a different game, that route. Unfortunately, it's so old. We'd need to rethink that quite massively. So no, that one is unlikely to get any kind of extension treatment.
Okay, well, I think that seems like a good place to end it tonight. Thank you very much for all the questions. Once again, some really interesting, insightful questions in there. I always think, what else are they going to ask us that we've not answered before? And then you guys always come up trumps. So thanks very much for your questions. Hopefully you found some of the discussions useful, enlightening, open the doors a little bit on some of the thought processes that we have as a team, but also perhaps give us a bit of context to some of the decisions that we make and some of the releases that are in your hands. Just a quick recap for those of you who haven't either watched the stream, or you come in late, or actually you haven't read the live stream. Shame on you. Read the roadmap even. Shame on you. It's a short one this time, so you've got no excuse. The Class 700 is coming on Tuesday, the 11th of July. So we are really looking forward to that. We've got a preview live stream for it on Thursday, where we'll talk about it in much more detail. We're also looking forward to having James on the stream for the first time. He is the guy who's been writing all of the copy for the roadmap, so he knows his stuff.
Interesting person.
That makes us He's very informative. He's got lots of
I
information.
say interesting, as in
Yeah.
a really interesting person to talk
Yeah.
to. So I'm really looking forward to having the banter on the 700.
Yes, absolutely. And there is a new livery and scenario pack on the roadmap from Skyhook Games, and there's a patch that went live. Hopefully, now for everybody who's playing the game. Consoles might have to wait a little bit longer because it's just going through their processes. But that contains middle and mainline improvements. That contains the HST livery designer update, as well as a couple of Great Western Express improvements, and the 103 physics improvements for Linke Rheinstrecke. There's also a few other Linke Rheinstrecke improvements on there as well. Check out the patch notes, check out the roadmap article. There is the summer sale that's on as well. Sorry, marketing hat on for a second. Summer sale is on. Lots of things. Lots of things are on sale. There's also the Humble Bundle as well. If you've not checked it out, it's an insanely good price if you are interested in getting into Train Sim World 3 for the first time, and you get loads and loads of add-ons with it as well.
An incredible deal. It really is.
And some of the money goes to charity as well. Goes to special effects.
Yeah.
So you can see kind of how much your donation is sort of raising. I think we're nearly at the £10,000 mark. Wow. That's been generated for special effects. So lovely. You get to feel warm and fuzzy as well, which is lovely.
And get lots and lots of content. And one of the things I think that people do, and I found quite fun is you get the content. Maybe you've already got some of it. Is they're then posting some of the keys or sharing some of the keys with the other members of the community, which is
it's lovely to see.
Yeah.
Lovely to see. And then finally, just to kind of celebrate July 4th, we have a couple of our creators doing American routes tonight that will follow us doing the roadmap. So we will be having JimmyDali playing the Harlem line, and then we'll have Ramagani doing New York to Trenton. So Ramagani's stream, I believe is in German. I haven't had a chance to check it, but you'll probably find out in about 45 minutes or so. So thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you very much for your questions. Thank you everybody, as ever, for your continued support and feedback. We love getting all of the comments and the discussion points, and I hope we've been able to do justice to some of your questions tonight as well. So thank you very much, Matt, for joining us.
Thank you.
As ever, it's nice to do it in the office as well and have someone physically next to me rather than 100 miles away, the other side of the M25. So thanks very much for watching. We'll be back. I think there's a stream on tomorrow, but I think it's a Train Sim Classic stream. We'll be back on Thursday for the Class 700 preview stream. We're looking forward to it. We hope you are too. We will see you then. So have a lovely evening, everybody, and we'll see you on the other side. See you later.
Hallo Freunde und herzlich willkommen zurück zu einer neuen Folge mit Trains in World 3 hier auf meinem Kanal. Und ich bin noch in der DTG-Maßnahme. Das heißt, ich werde jetzt noch diese Folge hier für den Stream von DTG aufnehmen. Also begrüße ich an der Stelle natürlich dann auch alle Zuschauer, die jetzt bei DTG im Stream eingeschaltet haben. Herzlich willkommen zu einer neuen Folge. Und wir gehen heute auf die New York Trenton. Die ist jetzt im Sale ab dem 29. Und dort könnt ihr massig Geld sparen. Und das Besondere ist, ihr spart nicht nur bei der New York Trenton Geld, sondern ihr könnt auch bei dem Acela Express Geld sparen, weil der wird auch mit im Sale drin sein. Und die Preise, die kenne ich jetzt an der Stelle noch nicht. Da müsst ihr euch überraschen lassen. Aber wir fahren mit dem Acela Express heute einmal die komplette Strecke ab. Und zwar habe ich mir überlegt, dass wir von der New York Penn Station Richtung Trenton fahren. Genau. Und zwar so, dass wir auch ein bisschen was von der Strecke sehen. Das war der Plan. So, also ich würde sagen, wir legen los mit unserer Eisenbahn. Und dann haben wir heute gleich 2 Fliegen mit einer Klappe geschlagen, den Acela Express und den New York Trenton. Ja, relativ neues Fahrzeug, relativ neue Strecke. Noch nicht ganz ein halbes Jahr alt. Da lohnt sich das auf jeden Fall mal reinzugucken. Die New York Trenton, eine sehr interessante Strecke auf jeden Fall. Ja. Nur bis hier das Laden vorbei ist. Da sind wir. Fahren Sie diesen Acela Express Passagierzug von New York Penn Station nach Trenton. Ich habe wieder einen Frosch im Hals. Also, Richtungswender erstmal nach vorne. Dann wieder, dass wir die Türen entriegeln. Das kriegen wir hin. Und dann müssen wir hier mal noch gucken. So, das ist auf Fahrgast. Beleuchtung vorne ist voll, Warnlichter sind auf Automatik, Parkbremse ist lösen, Türöffner normal. So, okay, alles klar. Gut, dann machen wir noch unsere Zugsicherungssysteme an. Haben wir hier einen Geschwindigkeitsregler, wir dürfen jetzt hier gleich mit 15 ausfahren. So, und dann sollen wir nochmal an 1 Minute und 15 Sekunden warten, bevor wir losfahren. So, Fahrplan Licht, Führerstandsdeckenbeleuchtung kann ausbleiben. Pulsdimmer machen wir aus. Neigetechnik ist aktiviert. Was haben wir hier noch? Scheibenwischer brauchen wir nicht. Scheibenwischer, Führerstandstemperatur. Klimaanlage machen wir mal an. Es ist ja warm draußen. Dann machen wir hier mal die Führerstandstemperatur ein bisschen runter. Führerstandsheizung können wir auslassen. So, hier können wir den Fahrdienstleiter kontaktieren. Okay, dann hoffe ich mal, dass ich mit der Eisenbahn zurechtkomme. Gut. Und dann geht es mit dem Acela Express einmal nach Trenton, Richtung Washington. So. Okay, schon mal das erste Thumbnail machen. Gucken, ob wir das nachher auch wirklich behalten oder nicht. Ja, der Acela Express. Wollen ja auch ein bisschen... Nee, das wollte ich nicht. Wir können die Türen gleich schon mal zumachen. So, die Acela Express Züge, die basieren auf dem TGW. Ist auch unverkennbar zu erkennen. Es gab ja mal den Versuch, ICEs an die Amerikaner zu verkaufen. Das hat aber nicht funktioniert. Dazu ist sogar ein ICE mit TGW-Triebköpfen, glaube ich, was ich hier machen muss, ist die Signale an. Ist, dass die ICE-Wagen mit TGW-Köpfen durch die Gegend gefahren sind. Steht auch hier im Rahmen des deutschen ICE-Triebzugs im Juli und August 1993 auf dem Nordostkorridor unterwegs gewesen. Also genau hier auf dieser Strecke für Demonstrationsfahrten. Und es wurde auch ein Talgo getestet, steht hier. Das ist auf jeden Fall mal hier alles europäisch eingekauft. Die Amerikaner selber, die mit General Electrics haben die zwar einen Lokomotivbauer, aber ich weiß jetzt nicht, inwiefern die großartig irgendwelche unbetriebenen Triebzüge gebaut haben. Das ist natürlich blöd hier in dem Zug, dass ich hier unten meine ATC nicht so richtig sehen kann, aber das ist jetzt erstmal nicht so wild. Ist ja eh erstmal raus hier. Aber ab 2021 sollen die Züge abgelöst werden. Von Liberty-Zügen. Ah, das sind hier mit Entenschnauze. Also werden wir die Züge hier lange nicht mehr sehen. Automatisch bremsen hast du nicht so, oder was? Jetzt können wir schneller fahren. Ja? Ah, dann dürfen wir schon mal auf die 60. Da unten sind die Warnlichter. Ist auch cool. Fällt mir jetzt zum ersten Mal auf. Da müssen wir ein bisschen gegenbremsen hier. Probieren wir mal aus. Jetzt müssen wir mal gucken, ob der nachher wirklich Probleme hat mit dem automatisch Bremsen. Also ob das System nicht wie bei der AFB funktioniert. Da bin ich sehr gespannt gleich. Passt. Ah, passt. Eigentlich noch zu niedrig. Aber in HD habt ihr es auf jeden Fall. Ihr wisst ja, dass ich ganz gerne, also meine Zuschauer zumindest wissen, dass ich ganz gerne vergesse, immer die Auflösung nach Livestreams wieder hochzustellen. Aber das ist ja nicht so wild. Also, der Tunnel gleich mal zu Ende gehen hier. New York ist ja auch so eine Stadt, die von Tunneln nicht genug kriegen kann. Das sind ja überall, wo irgendwas unter der Erde am Rumfahren ist. Also ein bisschen die Richtung, in die sich Stuttgart momentan entwickelt. Durch das Stuttgart 21-Projekt. Man da versucht aus 200 Richtungen irgendwelche Züge in einen zu kleinen Bahnhof reinzukriegen. Da müssen ordentlich Tunnel gebaut werden. Da ist hier New York Penn ja nochmal eine ganz anderes Niveau. So, dann können wir wieder schneller. 75, dann gleich auf 90 und dann müssen wir in New York einmal anhalten und dann fahren wir durch bis nach Trenton. Ich mache bewusst für diese Stream-Geschichte von DTG, mache ich bewusst Fahrplanfahrten, weil wir da am ehesten einen Großteil der Strecke sehen, als wenn wir Szenarien machen. Die Szenarien, da, liebe Freunde, auch die Zuschauer, die jetzt bei DTG natürlich jetzt dabei sind, die haben natürlich die Möglichkeit, dann auf meinen YouTube-Kanal zu kommen. Dort sind wir jetzt bei 585 Folgen. Trains in World, da sind die ganzen Szenarien, Einführungen und auch ganz viel anderes Zeug noch erklärt. Für alle von euch, die es noch nicht wissen, ich bin in Deutschland von Beruf Lokführer, der auch in der Schweiz fährt. Und da erkläre ich auch einiges rund um die Eisenbahn und auch die ein oder andere Anekdote aus meinem Leben als Lokführer oder Eisenbahner. Die haue ich dort auch hin und wieder mal raus und da sind teilweise wirklich Geschichten mit dabei, wo ich auch ehrlich sagen muss, dass meine Frau mir teilweise diese Geschichten zu Beginn meiner Eisenbahnkarriere nicht geglaubt hat, weil das so abwegig ist und so bekloppt ist, dass, ja, also wenn ich kein Eisenbahner wäre, würde ich wahrscheinlich auch sagen, ja, ob das jetzt nur wirklich so stimmt, wie der das erzählt, weiß ich nicht. Das SEHS ist das Zugsicherungssystem, unter welchem wir jetzt gerade unterwegs sind. Es gibt noch ATC. Das gibt es hier auf dieser Strecke auch. Das wechselt irgendwie hin und her. Ich habe so richtig Ahnung, davon habe ich leider keine. Mal hier anfangen zu bremsen. Einmal auf Unterdrückung. Jetzt haben wir die Penalty Brake. Also die Zwangsbremsung bekommen. Aber das hätte ich oben auch sehen müssen, dass da gleich 60 sind. Jetzt haben wir die Bremse aufgelöst. Und jetzt können wir die 60 fahren. Ja, wenn ihr eine Zugbeeinflussung bekommt, immer auf Unterdrücken gehen. Bei der Bremse, dann wird die Zwangsbremsung automatisch umgangen. Das Zugsicherungssystem lässt uns jetzt wieder 90 fahren. Wir müssen ein bisschen aufpassen, weil irgendwas wird wahrscheinlich da vor uns herfahren. Oder auch nicht. Eigentlich haben wir freie Bahn. Dann waren das wirklich die 60 da vorne, die ich einfach nicht, oder die ich einfach verpennt habe. Da kommen auch gleich schon wieder die nächsten 60. Die erstmal aus dem Stadtbereich raus sind. Dann schalte ich schon mal ab. Dass wir dann auch bremsbereit sind. So, auf den amerikanischen Strecken habe ich oben immer die Signale und die Geschwindigkeiten an. Auf den englischen Strecken nur die Streckengeschwindigkeit. Auf den deutschen Strecken habe ich oben immer alles aus, weil als Lokführer in Deutschland sollte ich in der Lage sein, den Zug in Deutschland zu fahren. Auch im Simulator natürlich. Das sollte machbar sein. So, von der Uhrzeit her sieht das alles sehr gut aus. 2,2 Meilen und wir haben noch 5,5 Minuten Zeit. Da sollten wir keinen Zeitdruck bekommen. So, Flugzeuge gibt es ja auch. Auf die 60 und dann lassen wir rollen. Weil da vorne dann auch gleich nur 45 erlaubt sind. Und dann kommt da auch schon unser erster Bahnhof. Und einziger Zwischenhalt hier auf dieser Fahrplanfahrt. Ich finde das schon cool, dass wir den RZ Express endlich bekommen haben. Relativ kurze Züge eigentlich. Die sind, meines Wissens nach, sind die kuppelbar. Ja. Schnauze vorne kann man aufmachen. Das ist ja bei einigen unserer deutschen Pendants zum ICE zum TGW AZ Express nicht möglich, nämlich beim ICE 1, die sind nicht kuppelbar. Aber der ICE 2, der ist dann kuppelbar. Und natürlich unsere ganzen modernen ICEs, also beim ICE 4, den 12, 13, 14-teiligen, da macht das Kuppeln natürlich keinen Sinn, weil da die Bahnsteige einfach zu kurz sind. Haben wir eigentlich auch sowas wie eine elektrodynamische Bremse? Tatsächlich nur die direkte Bremse. Ja, das ist schon interessant, was wir uns hier alles merken müssen. Also nicht nur ich, sondern ihr ja auch da draußen, weil wir haben ja doch sau viele Fahrzeuge inzwischen im Trains in World Universum und da sich immer alles zu merken, wie die Züge funktionieren oder was für Funktionen die haben und das ist schon nicht ohne, würde ich sagen. Weil bei den amerikanischen Lokomotiven geht es eigentlich noch, zumindest bei den Diesellokomotiven, weil die alle sehr ähnlich funktionieren. Aber bei den Triebzügen und so, da oder bei den älteren englischen Lokomotiven zum Beispiel, da ist das schon Wahnsinn, was man sich da merken muss. Bei der Anzahl an Züge, die wir haben. So, dann halten wir an. Und dann entriegeln wir und lassen die Fahrgäste mal zusteigen. Ich werde in der Zeit mal hier schauen. Kann ich das hoch machen? Hier die... Ich hätte jetzt eigentlich gerne hier ein bisschen heller gemacht, weil das kommt mir so dunkel vor. Geht wohl nicht. Hier unten eigentlich noch für Knöpfe. Die haben keine Bedeutung. Ja, also können wir den Bildschirm vorne anscheinend nicht heller machen. So, ein ähnlicher Triebzug vom Typ X2 wurde hier auch mal benutzt und angepasst. Und einem Testprogramm unterzogen, ist aber nie in Betrieb gegangen. Anschließend wurde der ICE Train North America, war ja den, wo ich vorhin gesagt hatte, basierend auf den Testfahrten wurde ein Anforderungskatalog erstellt und im Oktober 94 wurden schließlich 26 Hochgeschwindigkeitszüge an Bombardier Transportation gewann den, zusammen mit Alstom. Das ist schon, haben sie schon ein langes Programm hier. Also 10 Jahre hat es gedauert, bis sie dann die ersten Züge danach hatten. Also 2000 sind die ersten Züge ausgeliefert worden. Schon beeindruckend, dass nach 20 Jahren die Züge schon ausgetauscht werden. Wenn man dran denkt, dass unsere ICE 1 jetzt 30 Jahre auf dem Buckel haben und nochmal fit gemacht werden. Die 1, die sind ja jetzt noch nicht auf dem Abstellgleis, die werden jetzt mal nochmal fit gemacht, werden ein bisschen verkürzt. Länger werden sie nicht. Was ich ein bisschen schade finde, weil die ICE 1 sind so, für zumindest wenn ich Spätfahrten habe, also wenn ich abends mal unterwegs bin, sind das so meine Favoritenzüge, weil wir da noch Abteile haben, wo man sich auch mal ein bisschen zurückziehen kann. Seine Ruhe hat, vor allem auch das Licht ausmachen kann, dass man dann auch im Dunkeln schlafen kann. Das gibt es auf den modernen Zügen natürlich nicht mehr. Da haben wir nur Großraumabteile. Das finde ich ein bisschen schade. Dieses ganze Abteilkonzept, natürlich kriege ich weniger Fahrgäste in meinen Zug, wenn ich Abteile benutze. Aber ich finde, als Fahrgast ist das schon angenehmer. Wenn man dann mit fremden Leuten irgendwie in einem Abteil, in so einem Ding drin sitzt, dann zumindest nicht mit 60, 70 Stück. Man hat auch ein bisschen mehr Ruhe. Das ist leider so ein Konzept, was in Deutschland komplett untergegangen ist. Mit den ganzen modernen Triebzügen, die wir inzwischen haben. So, Bremse lösen. Und dann würde ich sagen, geht's los. So, der Erzähler Express ist ursprünglich übrigens für den Nahverkehr, für Boston, für den Nahverkehr Boston. Kann aber auch auf dieser Strecke hier benutzt werden, deswegen zeige ich euch das jetzt auch mal. Und ihr müsst bei mir immer dran denken, die Inhalte, die ihr bei mir auf dem Kanal seht, beziehungsweise in meinen Videos seht, immer komplett mit allen DLCs, die es gibt. Ja, jetzt wollen wir. Einmal Vollgas auf 70, dann gleich 110. Dann geht es im Sprint Richtung Trenton. Aber ich bin mit dem Acela Express hier auf der Strecke noch gar nicht gefahren. Das heißt, ich weiß gar nicht, was die Höchstgeschwindigkeit hier insgesamt ist. Also die Vmax von dem Fahrzeug ist im Regelbetrieb 240 km/h. Ganz wichtig. mph habe ich jetzt hier nicht gefunden. Könnte man noch mal kurz umrechnen, damit ihr das dann auch wisst. Ein hier 240 sind dann 149 mph, also 150 aufgerundet. Abgerundet werden es 149, aufgerundet. Wir runden mal nach oben auf, dann würde ich sagen 150 ist die Vmax. Also in mph dann. Muss man ja auch mal ein bisschen dran gewöhnen, dass das Zugsicherungssystem andere Geschwindigkeiten zulässt als die eigentliche Streckengeschwindigkeit. So, International Airport New York. Vorhin auch die Flugzeuge. Da müssen wir gleich wieder auf 85 runter. Hat sich ja gelohnt. Oh, und ging sogar Vorsichtssignale hier. Bremsbereit bin ich. Fahrschalter ist auf 0. So, wir biegen ab. Für eine Weiche. Jetzt kriegen wir gleich wahrscheinlich eine Zwangsbremsung. Okay, damit habe ich jetzt nicht gerechnet. Wir sind jetzt auch nicht mehr im SEHS, sondern im ATC. Auf einmal. Wie gesagt, das Zugsicherungssystem der Amerikaner habe ich noch nicht so ganz raus. Wenn das einer von euch vielleicht besser versteht, als ich es tue, dann steht es euch frei, mich dort mal aufzuklären und mir das versuchen so zu erklären, dass ich das verstehe. Wir können ja auf 85, ne? Da vorne ist aufgegangen. Das gibt jetzt natürlich ordentlich Abzüge in der B-Note. Ein kleiner Overspeed. Und es wird noch langsamer. Okay, leicht bergab. Dürfen gleich 125 fahren. Davon aus, dass wir da vorne jetzt über der Weiche fahren. Nicht. Auch nicht. Okay. Also keine Weiche. Mal wieder Leistung auf und dann brauchen wir gleich nur noch unsere Geschwindigkeitskontrolle nach vorne packen. Und dann geben wir mal Vollgas. Mal gucken. Die 41 Meilen natürlich relativ schnell runtergefahren, wobei 41 Meilen natürlich auch, ne? Müsst ihr mal 1,6 nehmen, dann habt ihr die Kilometer, die dort noch fehlen. Und natürlich die SIFA nicht vergessen. ...40 Meilen sind 64 Kilometer. So, in der New York Trenton, wenn ihr alle DLCs habt, einmal zur Übersicht für euch, habt ihr 100 Achievements zu sammeln, Collectibles. 3 Achievements gibt es. Ihr habt 28 Fahrten im Fahrplanmodus, davon sind aber 5 als Szenario. Und ich glaube 3 waren als Einführung. Dann habt ihr effektiv immer noch 20 Reisen, aber ihr habt den Fahrplanmodus und da habt ihr 301 Fahrt. Also hier auf der Strecke auf jeden Fall mal ordentlich was zu tun. Würde ich meinen. Aber da ist wichtig vorausgesetzt, ne, ihr habt alle DLCs. Und auf der PlayStation 4 und Xbox One kann es natürlich auch die eine oder andere Fahrt weniger geben. Das kennt ihr ja von einigen deutschen Strecken, unter anderem München-Augsburg, wo dann bestimmte Fahrplanfahrten nicht zur Verfügung stehen, was einfach damit zu tun hat, dass die Old-Gen-Konsolen nicht in der Lage sind, das leistungsmäßig noch auf die Kette zu kriegen, so viel KI-Züge zu verarbeiten. Daher müsst ihr, wenn ihr auf der Konsole unterwegs seid, so ein bisschen mit Einschränkungen klarkommen. Jetzt glaube ich, habe ich eine komplette Zwangsbremsung. Kann mich zumindest nicht mehr befreien. Jo. Da komme ich jetzt nicht mehr raus. Das ist noch, also nach und nach gewöhne ich mich an dieses Zugsicherungssystem, aber so richtig begriffen und umsetzen kann ich das noch nicht. Da muss ich auch mal offen und ehrlich sein. Ich dachte eigentlich, man kann die Zwangsbremsung wieder lösen. Jetzt habe ich sie gelöst bekommen. Warum auch immer. Können wir jetzt wieder Gas geben. Ich könnte ja auch sagen, dass ich ohne Zugsicherungssystem fahre, aber das ist ja langweilig. Dann lieber so ein bisschen was verkehrt machen, als wenn ich langweilig einfach nur einen Zug von A nach B fahre, ohne dass ich mich an irgendwelche Regeln halten muss. Das ist dann auch nicht interessant. Da ist das hier doch dann angenehmer. Auch wenn man nicht alles richtig macht. Gehört aber auch dazu. Man muss ja auch nicht immer alles wissen, ne? Ja, irgendwann werde ich wahrscheinlich das mal alles begriffen haben hier. Auch einige amerikanische Strecken, auf denen ich unterwegs bin, auf denen es keine Zugsicherungssysteme gibt. Oder zumindest nicht solche wie hier. Und das ATC, das kennen wir ja aus Long Island Railroad hatte es zuerst, das ATC. Sicherheitswarn. Na. Das bin ich. Ihr seht, ne? Mit dem Azella Express ist hier natürlich nicht so viel los, weil wir unterwegs auch nirgendwo anhalten. Halt wirklich Hochgeschwindigkeitsverkehr. Und da gibt es ja bei Trains and Worlds durchaus Zuschauer, die diese Hochgeschwindigkeitsfahrten sehr gerne fahren. Kassel-Würzburg zum Beispiel ist ja auch so ein Beispiel von den deutschen Strecken, die für den Spieler, der viel Action haben will, natürlich relativ langweilig werden kann, weil wir dort ja in Kassel losfahren, theoretisch sogar schon in der LZB drin sind, mit der LZB dann einmal bis nach Würzburg fahren. Wenn wir da die AFB natürlich dazu nehmen, dann haben wir einen vollautomatisierten Eisenbahnbetrieb auf der Strecke, außer in Fulda einmal anhalten. Das muss der Lokführer noch selber machen. Aber ansonsten mit der AFB zusammen kann die LZB ja durchaus auch dazu in der Lage sein, Geschwindigkeiten selber einzuhalten und auch vor haltzeigenden Signalen im Stehen zu kommen. Und da gibt es ja durchaus Leute, die sagen, dass Kassel-Würzburg deswegen keine Strecke ist. Ich sehe das ein bisschen anders. Wir reden hier immer noch von einem Simulator. Oh, hier ist schon wieder... Muss man oben besser darauf achten, was oben für eine Zahlen stehen. Also weiter am Takt, genau. Also Kassel-Würzburg, wir reden hier von einem Simulator und die Schnellfahrstrecke Kassel-Würzburg ist halt in der Realität auch einfach so, dass wir dort LZB haben. Deswegen bin ich schon der Meinung, dass man sich dort nicht beschweren braucht. Wir wollen Simulation und da haben wir Simulation bekommen. In München-Augsburg die ICEs da hin und her zu fahren, da fahren wir auch überwiegend mit LZB hinter Parsing. Gehört einfach dazu. Und das sind ja noch die interessanten Strecken. Es gibt ja noch durchaus Strecken, die noch langweiliger sind. Was jetzt so dieses automatischen Fahren betrifft. Da haben wir schön Regionalbahn. Express oder was auch immer. Da muss man auch gar... Ah, schon wieder. Das gibt's doch gar nicht. Bin ich zu blöd dafür? Oben steht doch die 95. Warum achte ich da nicht drauf? Oh, und ständiges Wechseln hier. Sollte ich vielleicht mal oben öfter hingucken. Aber das ist halt von dem, was wenn ich so erzähle, dann gibt es gewisse Sachen, auf die ich immer wieder nicht achte. Wenn wir jetzt mal so den Streckenverlauf gucken. Normalerweise dürfte jetzt geschwindigkeitstechnisch nicht mehr viel passieren. Hier vielleicht nochmal. Aber gleich dürfen wir 145 sogar mal fahren. Fahrmotor mal so richtig durchblasen. Gestern ist mir eine Lok abgenippelt. Ja, Fahrmotorlüfter die ganze Zeit immer die Sicherung rausgesprungen. Dann ist das Ding nur mit einem Drehgestell gelaufen und für ein Drehgestell war ich einfach zu schwer. Telefon auch noch. Das ist das Lokführer-Dasein. 24 Stunden, 370 Tage im Jahr. Ein Scherz am Rande. Jetzt gleich mal Vollgas. Freue ich mich schon. Mal richtig ausfahren, die Karre. Natürlich auch etwas, was wir uns alle ein bisschen mehr wünschen, ein bisschen mehr Personenverkehr in den USA. Vielleicht auch mal so eine U-Bahn. Oder was natürlich, oh, ja, 130. Hat sich ja gelohnt hier. So eine Sache, so ein Ding wie zum Beispiel die Chicagoer Hochbahn. Das wäre ja ein total interessantes Ding. Aber ich glaube, da würden einige Rechner dann doch in die Knie gehen, weil die Chicagoer Innenstadt nachzubauen gehört dann ja auch dazu, weil das ist ja eine aufgeständete Eisenbahn, also oder Bahn. Oh, das ist ganz bequem hier. Fahrplanfahrten an sich ja insgesamt nicht so viel Abwechslung wie in den Szenarien. Was aber ja wirklich daran liegt, dass wir ja vordefinierte Fahrten immer noch haben und die müssen ja alle aufeinander abgestimmt sein. In diesem Fall haben wir in den 24 Stunden 301 KI-Fahrten oder Fahrten, die hier berechnet werden müssen. Und die müssen ja aufeinander abgestimmt werden, deswegen Fahrplanmodus natürlich ein bisschen weniger Abwechslung. Warum es keine Rangierfahrten im Fahrplanmodus gibt, ist nochmal eine andere Geschichte. Oder nur sehr wenige Rangierfahrten. Wäre natürlich auch nochmal so eine Geschichte, wo man sagen könnte, okay, rangier mal in irgendeinem Güterbahnhof einen Zug zusammen, dann fährst du den auf dem Gleis, holst, dann kommt eine Lok draufgefahren und dann kannst du dich entscheiden, ob du mit der Lok den Zug selber fahren möchtest oder ob du die KI wegfahren lässt. Das wäre natürlich eine ganz tolle Geschichte. Das muss aber alles mit Zeiten natürlich dann passieren. Also da muss dann wirklich bestimmte Abfahrtszeiten und Ankunftszeiten definiert sein, damit das mit dem Fahrplan überhaupt funktionieren kann. Was aber bei einer Rangierfahrt eigentlich nicht der Fall ist. In der Rangierfahrt, da wird so lange rangiert, bis die Arbeit fertig ist. Also wird es aber nichts mit den 140, Freunde. Habe ich jetzt überhaupt schon mal einmal erreicht? Ja, doch, gerade eben, ne? Ein tolles Gerät. Ein kurz, aber... Wie viel Mittelwagen hat das Ding? 2, 4, 6. Normale TGW hat, glaube ich... Oder der Duplex hat 7. Wenn ich mich nicht irre. Dann da vorne ist erstmal 150 erlaubt. Vielleicht dürfen die dann auch mal wirklich ausfahren. So, höher einzustellen geht die Geschwindigkeitskontrolle auch nicht. Und dann geht es jetzt mit 150 auf Trenton zu. 39 Minuten sind wir unterwegs, also die Fahrt an sich soll 44 Minuten insgesamt dauern. Laut der Zeitangabe im Fahrplan. 41 sollen wir da sein, um 10 sind wir abgefahren. Lustigerweise dauert der Rückweg 10 Minuten länger. Laut den Fahrplanangaben. Kann aber damit zusammenhängen, dass dort andere Geschwindigkeiten dann zugelassen sind, die den Zug ein bisschen langsamer machen. Also dass wir da eher mal zum Bremsen geneigt werden oder gezwungen werden. Das ist durchaus möglich und auch nicht ungewöhnlich, dass ein Zug in eine Richtung länger braucht als in die andere. Kommt immer darauf an, wo der Zug dann wirklich lang fährt. Ich bin noch da, keine Sorge. Werden die Eisenbahn heute nicht kaputt spielen. So, lassen wir mal rollen. 135, diesmal habe ich es gesehen. Aber dann haben wir die 150 zumindest einmal gefahren. zumindest mal keinen Stress mit dem Bremsen. Wir auch langsam dann von der Geschwindigkeit runterreguliert werden, weil wir jetzt auf Trenton zufahren. Weil Trenton ja ein relativ kleiner Bahnhof ist, wie man sieht, ne? Da ist nicht viel Action, da ist nicht viel los. Trenton. Da wünsche ich mir immer noch, dass wir die Strecke bis nach Washington bekommen hätten, aber da auch wieder die Einschränkungen der Old-Gen-Konsolen. Der Promillegefälle, deswegen die Leistung jetzt auch schon abgeschaltet. 6,1 Meile. Bei so hohen Geschwindigkeiten ist die Entfernung natürlich auch relativ schnell dann runtergefahren. Bei Kassel-Würzburg 180 Kilometer in 80 Minuten fahren ist ja auch eine Hausnummer. Eigentlich ist der Hochgeschwindigkeitsverkehr, beziehungsweise der Hochgeschwindigkeitsschienenverkehr eigentlich eine ganz interessante Sache. Weil physikalisch gesehen ist das natürlich eine totale Herausforderung, ans Limit zu gehen mit solchen doch sehr schnellen und schweren Maschinen. Okay, das habe ich jetzt nicht verstanden. Wo jetzt die Geschwindigkeitsbegrenzung herkommt, keine Ahnung. Aber die Streckengeschwindigkeit, die ist auf jeden Fall noch höher. Ja, ich muss in Suppression bleiben, ne? Also... Wir haben doch gar keine Signale und nix. Ich bin verwirrt. Aber nun gut. Nein, ich muss in Suppression bleiben, sonst kriege ich die Zwangsbremsung. Aber 1,6 Meilen, wir haben immer noch 2 Minuten Zeit. Also, das ist machbar. Aber das Ding, das bremst nicht von selber. Das ist interessant. So, vor den Toren Trentons. Wann kommt die Weiche an den Bahnsteig? gehe davon aus, dass ich jetzt noch weiter runterbremsen muss. Aha, ich hab's gewusst. Ja, geht es ganz gemütlich hier rein. Hat da noch was vor uns? Nö. Nicht. Okay, eine leichte Verspätung haben wir. Aber für deutsche Definition immer noch pünktlich. Da vorne kommt die Weiche. Sogar für Schweizer Definition noch pünktlich. In der Schweiz zählt ein Zug ab 3 Minuten als verspätet. Deswegen ist das ja noch so interessant. Also umso interessanter ist es natürlich, dass in der Schweiz die Züge Pünktlichkeit von über 90% haben, während bei uns die Fernverkehrszüge im Mai Pünktlichkeit von 66% hatten. Das muss man sich reinziehen. Jeder dritte ICE war einfach mal verspätet. Kurz vor dem roten Signal sollen wir anhalten. Ah, nicht ganz eine Punktlandung, aber okay. Das Gepiepe jetzt zumindest nicht da ist. Passiert tut jetzt. Dann schauen wir uns mal kurz die Auswertung an und dann mache ich alle Zuschauer nochmal darauf aufmerksam. Wenn ihr Lust habt, meinen Kanal zu verfolgen, dann steht euch das frei, in der Videobeschreibung den Link zu benutzen für meine Zuschauer, die dieses Video ja ein bisschen später zu sehen bekommen. Da nochmal der Hinweis. Ihr dürft natürlich wie immer sehr gerne ein Abo dalassen. Ihr dürft die Glocke aktivieren, dann verpasst ihr auch nichts mehr. Kommentare sowohl bei DTG als auch natürlich auf meinem eigenen Kanal werden wie immer persönlich beantwortet. Und für alle von euch, die Lust haben, auf den Discord zu kommen, der Link ist wie immer in der Videobeschreibung. Für die DTG-Zuschauer an der Stelle natürlich der Hinweis über den Kanal, also über meinen YouTube-Kanal könnt ihr dann auch auf den Discord kommen. Dort geht es ganz viel um die Eisenbahn und auch andere Simulatoren. Und dort sind auch ganz viele Eisenbahner aus Deutschland mit dabei und da könnt ihr gerne mal vorbeischauen, wenn ihr Lust habt. In dem Sinne wünsche ich euch jetzt allen da draußen noch einen schönen Abend, egal woher und wann ihr das Video schaut. In dem Sinne ein gepflegtes Reingehauen und bis zum nächsten Mal.